Good morning, one and all. So I'm Ajit Ram Pathak and working as a data scientist, as ma'am said, in NDS Mumbai. So morning is always exciting. So let's start today's session with that excitement only. So today's topic is the essence of machine learning in one go, which is a part of 5 days FDP on emerging paradigms in intelligence, in artificial intelligence and data science. So I will give a bit idea about what AI is, even though the previous speaker has already given the brief introductory talk on AI. So I will not focus much on that, but still I will give some glimpse on that as the slides are already prepared. So uh, AI has emerged as one of the decisive expertise with application across various industry domains. And machine learning, which is a subset of AI, is an important set of algorithm used to solve the business problems. So the machine learning algorithms are basically everywhere, like in the retail sector, in finance sector, in insurance sector, in manufacturing sector, in healthcare. So these all are the various sectors where currently the AI is used, and uh, it is necessary to build the AI-based solution to stay competitive in the market. So that's why AI and ML are important skill that everyone required in engineering and management discipline. So let's see the quote of the day. So prediction. The future is not the magic; it's an AI. That's what said the famous Dave Waters, who is an expert in artificial intelligence. So let's see what the magic is and what the AI is. So I will give the broader outline of my presentation, which is the why machine learning. I will start with. Then I will talk about the key terms of the FDP. Then what is machine learning? Then framework of ML model development. Then steps involved in ML projects. So these are even shorter outline, but the internal parts of each of these are huge. Like step involved in ML project from end to end. We are going to discuss that. So yeah. So the next thing is why machine learning. So here we will talk from why machine learning to how machine learning, and let's see what is the reason we should study the machine learning or why should we go towards it. So as we all know that the world is filled with data. Data means a lot of data. Like you can see pictures, music, words, text, videos, etc. So and it doesn't look like that it's going to slow down anytime soon. So machine learning brings promise to deriving meaning from all of these data. So, like there is a lot of data in the world generated every day. Like data not only generated by the human, it is also generated by the computers, by the phones, and other devices. So, what is the ML role here? So, ML can create a significant value for organization if it is used properly. Or you can say machine learning algorithm can used for the identifying factors that influence the key performance indicators, which can be further used for the decision making and value creation. For example, most of you like knowing about the Amazon recommendation system, like when it started and when what it is today now. So like they have increased their sale from 35 to 50% in last few years by using the recommended system. So that's how the machine learning is using the data and letting customer buy, which they even don't need to buy. So that's what the magic of machine learning is. So yeah, so uh, here you can see some more reason for why to use machine learning. Like machine learning learn from the data samples of solved cases, like they don't require any expert knowledge or they are like automatically trained with the help of some data sets and they have very good test measurement and they can also process in the large amount. So these all are the very suspect, like why should we go towards machine learning? Okay. Now, let's talk about the key terminology of FDP. So, as you will see, this key terminology is AI and data science. The main purpose of depicting this diagram was like showing the interrelation between AI and DS. So AI, as already explained, that it is something which is simulate the human thinking process and through method like from simply the if then else rule to the complex models. So that's how AI work. And then ML and DL are integral part, or you can say subset of it. But how data science is collaborating with it? So whatever the mathematics we have learned during our school days or what, so that's what the math are being utilized here by the data science to overlap with AI technique and understanding and making sense of the data. Like it uses the probabilities, statistics, numerical optimization, linear algebra, and calculus, and many more. So this is what the theme of FDP, and I will be stick towards the theme only. So yeah, so this is how it was the relevance of AI and data science. Now I will talk about what is machine learning. So as we all know, machine learning is surrounding us already. We have so many different applications which involve machine learning. Like take an example of our phone, our Google Assistant at home or Alexa. You just tell her and it's done. So that's what basic machine learning, or you can say we are using basic machine learning in this way. So all human beings are experiencing every day. These all the basic machine learning, either knowingly or unknowingly. That is a different story. Today, machine learning immediate applications are already quite wide range, including the image recognition, like you have seen your phone lock or something, or face recognition system in your phone or something, and fraud detection and recommendation system, as I have told about the Amazon, and as well as text and speech system too, like as I said before, Alexa and Siri. So these powerful capabilities can apply to wide range of fields. Wide range of field, I mean to say that the field which are actually very crucial, like diabetic retinopathy and skin cancer detection, or retail, and of course the transportation in form of self-parking or self-driving vehicles. So how to define the machine learning? Like you can see from this diagram that machine learning is the so you can say the subset of the machine learning is the subset of AI. But how we will define it? So there are many definitions given by the expert, but the simplified one I choose is it is a modern development technique that enables computer to solve problem by using examples of real data. So this is something which is following our software development lifecycle model, and it is solving the problems by the using the real world data, which we have just seen that there are how many data is generated. So let me put it in a more simple way, that is using data to answer questions. Like so, these are some terminology, and which I have seen from the great scientist Go, which has defined in a very simplest way. He said that using data to answer question. It is the very simplest definition, which could be a machine learning. So, like in particular, here we can split the definition into the two parts. So using the data and answer the questions. So using the data and answer the question. So in intermediate steps are trading model, then serving prediction. Serving prediction means the inference or answering questions or delivering models, whatever you can say. So in machine learning, both of them are equally important, like the data and answer the questions. Both of them are equally important. While answering question is referred to as making prediction or inference. So yeah, that's what the answer question means. Like what you want to know from the by giving something there, some data to the model, and what you are getting. So that's how these keywords are related. Now let's drill into those two slides briefly. Training refers to using our data to inform the creation and fine tuning of a predictive model. So this predictive model can be used to serve the predictions on the previously unseen data and answer those questions. So as more data is gathered, the model can improve over time, and like he can perform better on the predictions. So like you may have noticed that the key component here is the data. So everything is hinges on data, and data is the key to unlocking the machine learning, just as much as the machine learning is the key to unlocking the hidden insights of data. So that's how we can relate the data and machine learning and how they are used to identifying problem to answering the questions. So well, now let's see the categories of ML algorithms or machine learning algorithms. So the first one is supervised learning, then unsupervised learning, and then the new trending one. Like trending one means the research is where going on much as reinforcement learning. So what supervised learning is? So supervised learning is a type of machine learning in which the every training sample from the data set has a corresponding label you can say, or the output value associated with it. That means what? Whatever the data we have, by reading which the model has to answer is already labeled. It means what? The outputs are already defined. So as a result, the algorithms learn to predict the labels or output values. You can use the supervised learning to do things like predict the sale price of house or classify the objects in the image, like whether it is an apple or banana or cat or dog, anything. So these algorithms require the knowledge of both the outcome variable, which is also known as the dependent variable, and the feature variable. Feature variable is also known as independent variable or input variable. So the algorithm learns, or you can say the estimate the value of model parameters or the feature weights by defining a loss function. So what is loss function and how it is defined, that we'll see when we'll studying the steps of machine learning, like the project in machine learning. Now we'll there are some popular algorithms on supervised learning, which is linear regressions, logistic regressions, and these are some examples of supervised learning algorithms. Now, another category is unsupervised learning. So, in unsupervised learning, there are no labels for the training data. The algorithm tries to learn the underlying pattern or distribution that govern the data. So, these algorithms are set up algorithms which do not have the knowledge of outcome variable, as we have seen that the supervised learning has already the label of what the output will be. So it don't have the knowledge of outcome variable in the data set. And the algorithm find the possible values of the outcome variables. So you can see here with this examples, like you have the samples, and by using the unsupervised learning, these samples are grouped into the cluster. So the cluster has categorized them into the some same color, or you can say sometime in different sizes. So that's how the unsupervised learning do, because it doesn't know what the output should be. So what it do, it some depending upon the problem. Like if there are multiple types of fruit, so it will cluster or group them separately, like depending upon their shape, size, and color. Like as you can see in this example. So well, as I'm talking about clusters, so let me give us some pondering on that. So, algorithms such as clustering or principal component analysis are examples of unsupervised learning algorithm. So, clustering is an important concept, and when it comes to the unsupervised learning, it mainly deals with finding a structure or a pattern in collection of the uncategorized data. So, like uncategorized data, what we have here, so many potatoes of different colors. In real, I have not seen in this kind of potatoes, but yeah. So that's what this mainly deals with, finding a structure or patterns in the data. So clustering algorithm will process your data and find natural clusters or groups if they exist in the data. If they doesn't exist, it doesn't matter. It will find every time. And it depends up to you. You might can see that the red one is not visible here. Why so? So it depends upon you. What are the number of clusters you decide to you want your algorithm to identify. So on that basis, it create the clusters. So the ultimate meaning is it allow you to adjust the granularity of these groups. So it's up to you, like how many clusters or output you want. Well, so yeah, let's move towards next slide. So supervised versus unsupervised. So already we have discussed all this, like data is labeled, data is not labeled, and you collect the data. Outputs are already depend upon the previous experiences. And in unsupervised learning, you find all kinds of unknown patterns in the data. And we have already also seen the regressions are the popular, some supervised learning or some clustering or the unsupervised learning. So yeah, this all already we discussed. So to summarize them, I have put this slide purposely. So yeah, so that's it about the supervised and unsupervised learning algorithms. Now we'll talk about the reinforcement learning. So like it takes a different approach. So reinforcement learning is a learning like what action to take in the situation and to maximize your reward. So that's how it works. Or you can say, I would like to explain with an example. Like you can see here, like here we have an interpreter, an agent, and the interpreter is, this is the reward, which is depending upon the action and the environment, which has been observed by interpreter. So these all are the definitions which you can correlate how this works. But the thing which is important is to understand in a more practical way that you might like there are many data sets in which there could be the uncertainty around. Like uncertainty, I mean to say that the uncertainty in both input variable and output variable. So, for example, you can think of the Microsoft Word. Suppose if a person type a keyword like beautiful and it does and the spellings are incorrect, then the Microsoft Word spell check immediately return the multiple options like beautiful, bountiful, dutiful, beautiful, something like that. So here the prediction is not one single value, but a set of values. So basically, reinforcement learning algorithms are the algorithms that have to take sequential actions, or you can say actions, I mean to say the decisions, to maximize a cumulative reward. So this is what the reinforcement learning is. And the Markov chain and Markov decision process are the examples of some reinforcement learning algorithms. So yeah, so this is what the third category of machine learning algorithms. So yes. So yeah, now again I have put this slide purposely to give like glimpse on the how these three are related and not related, or you can say the comparison purpose. So these are several criteria like definition, type of data, type of problem, supervision, algorithms, and aim behind this in applications. I hope I'm not going too fast. So supervised machine learning is already, I have told you what it do, like it learn by using labeling data and labeled data, and then unsupervised is trained on unlabeled data. Then type of data here is labeled, here is unlabeled. And for reinforcement, there is no predefined data. Even sometimes reinforcement learning is also merged with supervised learning and sometimes also with unsupervised learning. So that is a different story. So the problems, you can see the regression, classification, clustering, exploration, and exploration. So the supervision are required in supervised ML, and unsupervised, no supervision required. Similarly, in reinforcement learning, no supervision is required. Algorithm, as I have already discussed about this. So these are the popular algorithms of the supervised and unsupervised and reinforcement. And the aim behind this is the calculated outcomes and discovered underlying patterns, learn a series of actions, and applications are same. Like risk evaluation for the supervised, recommendation system or anomaly detections for unsupervised, and self-driving cars, gaming, healthcare for the reinforcement learning. So this is how you can see the, you can say a comparative view of supervised, unsupervised, and reinforcement learning. Well, so let's go toward the next slide. Now, the next topic is framework of machine learning model development. So what should be a framework to develop a machine learning model. So that's what the title is. So here, the first phase come to the picture is problem or opportunity identification. That means what? Uh, as we all know, a good ML project starts with the ability to define the problem clearly. As much as your problem is clearly defined, you can define upon the input or output you are expecting from this machine learning model. So for this purpose, it is very important to know the domain knowledge, and that's how um, it is a very important phase. You should have domain knowledge, and what you should be able to find out the what are the various things which we should consider before starting the ML model development. So you can, in other word, or in a very simple word, it is the identification of problem in a very precise manner. Okay. So this was the first step of the framework of ML model development. The next step is feature extraction. So feature extraction is mean what? Means the collection of relevant data. So the once problem is defined clearly, the next step is to identify and collect the relevant data. So this is an iterative process, since relevant data may not be available since beginning the project. So that's why the next important step is the extraction of features. So here you have to correct the kind of data lake. So on the data lake, there are multiple set of sources from where you have extracted the data required based on your problem or opportunity which you have identified. Well, so now we'll talk about the data pre-processing. So data preparation and data processing, what it includes actually? It includes the data cleaning. What the data cleaning means, something we will also call sometimes the feature extractions, the feature extraction, also, and feature engineering. So what the feature engineering could be? For example, if you have X1 and X2 are the two features that are captured in the original data. So what could be the feature engineering here? So there are in this case, what we can do, we can find out the product of X1 and X2, and also the division of X1 and X2 to get the new features of this. So that's how the feature engineering works, and this step is come in the data pre-processing part. So data processing would include data cleaning, as I said, feature engineering, as I said. So these two are the important part, and so let's move towards the next step. This is what the model building. So whatever we are discussing in this framework, we will going to explore them in detail while discussing about steps involved in project development, because these all are somewhat interrelated with what are the machine learning project required, because these are the base, or you can see the framework of ML model development. So ML model building is an iterative process that aims to find the best model. So we will see this in detail while discussing the steps in ML project. So the next part is, or you can say the last part is of the framework, is communication and deployment of the data analysis. So generally this stage is called deployment and data analysis, but when it comes to the practical, and then the communication also becomes the important part. That means what? Well, how you are going to deliver your product or something which you have developed to the client. Definitely with the help of communication, like what the presentation data you have prepared and what the output you are going to show. So that's why it plays a very crucial role. You can consider it as a data visualization technique. So that's why the data visualization technique is also on the train. So deployment of the model involve developing software solutions and product, and like we have already discussed, recommender system, knowledge detection, etc., etc. So this is how a framework of ML model development is defined. So these are the 5 steps, or basically you can say the standard steps for follow while defining the framework for ML model development. Yeah. So now we will go towards all the previously steps which we have seen, and that will also covered in here. That is steps involved in ML projects. So these are the some steps involved in ML projects, like based on our framework we discussed. So now we'll talk about different steps involved in machine learning project. Like these all are the steps we am talking about when the problem is already identified. Now you have defined the problem. Now you have to start the developing ML projects. So what it is? So now building the data set, preparing the data, model selection, train the model, evaluate the model, hyperparameter tuning, prediction, etc. So these all we'll see in very detail and a great detail one by one. So build the data set. So the build in any machine learning or data science project, and what are all different operations we perform. So here, the first step begins with the data collections, or you can say the building the data set. So in the building the data set, because building the data set is very important phase, because the data set can be used to solve your machine learning based problem. So working with the data is perhaps the most overlooked. Like we think generally what we think that, yeah, data set we got, now we can start developing machine learning models. Most of the people think like that. Data set is there now. Yes, go ahead and start doing. But now there are many APIs are also available. So let's start doing something on that. But when you have to devise your own problem statement, you have to provide a solution for your own particular problem statement. Or at that time, the most important or the crucial part is the building your own data set. So, it is generally overlooked, but in 16, the Forbes 10 have a survey and on the 80 data scientists, and it's find that they spend the 80% of their time on working with data. So yeah, so and 20% in other steps. That's my main purpose to share this slide was to emphasize on preparation of data and how important it is when you are solving or emphasizing on your own problem, or you are going to devise solution based on your core problem statement which you have defined. There are already some standard data sets available, which is already clean or usable. But yeah, when we are starting afresh, we should keep in mind this. So yeah, so there are 4 ways to break down the data proportions in the machine learning technique. The first one is data collection, inspection, summary statistics, and data visualizations. So each play an important role. So let's take a deeper look in each step. So here you have seen you can see the data collection. So for example, if you're trying to build a system to detect if a cat is present in the image or not. So you can take a lot of pictures of some which contain the cat or some which don't. So the format, it could be anything like we have supervised learning and unsupervised learning. So the data could be either labeled or unlabeled. And ultimately the availability of data will be determining the machine learning ask you can solve. So now that you have some data, so it is important to inspect that data. So that's what we call the data inspection. So it is very essential to inspect the integrity of data. So don't assume that any data you find is high quality. Like ultimately, the data will have a massive impact on how well you can expect your model to perform. So as you explore your data, you are trying to identify anything that is outside from outside the norm. So you are also here, while doing inspection, you are also looking at any missing value or any incomplete data, or sometimes even the data transformation is also required. So you are you have to see which model model is required, which kind of data. Like many models prefer the numeric data. So when it requires transform to the transformation of data to the numeric data. For example, we have a string like length or you can say the colors like yellow, green, blue. So, but your model accepts the numeric number. So you have to convert this yellow, green, blue to the numbers. So how you will convert that also we'll see in the next step. So yeah, that's it. So this is what the data inspection is. So next is build the data set. So you can see that what I have told about the summary statistics or data visualizations. Actually, all we do to find the pattern on data, like whether data is usable or not. Apart from this, you might have heard when you have a set of some data set, like suppose a set of data you have retrieved from the Twitter. Sorry. So when you have a set of tweets to work upon, so what the things you require to deal with that tweets and how you are going to find some meaningful insight from that tweets. So what you will do there first, you will do the inspection on that data. The missing value is something you will see where someone has replied as okay or the K or something like that. So that tweet is not relevant for you to get any kinds of outcome. Suppose you are trying to predict the sentiments of market while yesterday the Kabul, Afghanistan, the incident happened. So you are predicting that what will happen in the share market based on the incident, the global incident which happened recently. So you are just defining some parameters or keywords like Kabul, Afghanistan, hashtag, something like that, and then you will extracting some information. But the information which you extracted, you have to do analysis. Like the most popular technique used is equity data analysis, that is EDA, and also the correspondence analysis. So with the help of that, you will be able to find out the pattern of data, like how the terms are related, and like you will see the hashtag share market or hashtag Indian market or hashtag Nifty how related with the hashtag the Kabul Afghan event. So that's how you will see the correlation by using the EDA. So that is the machine learning practicality. So how you can visualize the thing while building the data set. So if you find that data are somewhat correlevant, then you will proceed towards the model development. If data is not correlevant, you will again extract some other hashtag and try to map like if your plot is getting insightful or you are getting some appropriate data or not. So in this way that you can work upon the data set. Yeah. So yes. As I have told, like the summary statistics and data visualization is the part and which can help you to understand what data is communicating. So there are also many statistical tools that can use to calculate the things like use mean, the standard deviations, or like they can give you the scale and shape of data sets. So you might be also able to detect the outliers. So like I see in this example, these all both circles are detecting the outliers. So this graph has been plotted with the help of some data visualization tools, for example, say. So here, these are the outliers which you can say, and here you can see there are some patterns of the data, or you can see some clusters of data, depending upon which algorithm or model you are using. So yeah, so this is what this is how it is visualization is helpful to identify the data, or you can say build the data set. So the next step is data pre-processing, or you can say also the preparing the data. So the first term comes to the picture is dealing with missing data. I have already talked about it. So it is very quite common in real world problem to miss some values or our data samples. It may be due to the errors on the data collections or blank spaces or any reason could be. So, but the important is if we not focus on that, then most of algorithm which cannot handle the missing value, so there then your model will be fail on that cases. So that's why you have to identify them, and there are various ways to identify them. Like you can eliminate the sample with the missing value, or sometimes you cannot eliminate because that data could be important, and you do the average of other, or you can say find the mean of the rest of the samples and fill the missing value. So these are all are the some techniques which involved on the data preprocessing, or you can say preparing of data. So this is the first one. The next one is handling categorical data. So how you handle the categorical data? So there are two features, the ordinal one and the nominal one. There are many other features as well, but I am talking about these two here. So ordinal features are the categorical features that can be sorted. For example, the class size, like if the sorted size is large, medium, XL, double XL, whatever it is. So yeah, so mapping the ordinal feature is to make sure that the algorithm interprets the ordinal features correctly. So what we convert is categorical string value into the integers. So what we do, we manually map like L to 2, M to 1, and S to 0. So that's what the size is, like large, medium, and small. And the map variable are 0, 1, and 2. So this is how ordinal features map. And then some nominal features are also there, like we have to handle them. Then, for example, color. So, like color is something, there could be many color, like there is no category there. Like here, like size small is less than size medium, and size medium is less than size large in ordinal features. But in nominal features, if we talk about color, for example, then there is nothing to compare them. Like red is less than yellow, yellow is less than white. We cannot say that, and we cannot say generally like that. So what we do on that case? So there, they come to the picture that the encoding nominal for the class labels. And the most popular one is, which is used, is one hot encoding. So what this one hot encoding is? So what we do here, suppose there are three colors, red, yellow, and green. So what we do, we define 1 to red and 0 to yellow and green. And then similarly, yellow, if yellow is there, then other two will be 0, and green is there, then next two will be 0. So why this one hot coding is used and why it is popular? The thing is, you will see the column for the three classes, yellow, red, and green. Like when we are having hot encoding. So what we have done, we have set 1, 0, 0 for each color, like red one and yellow one, green one. But their places are different. So why this is done? This is done for ensuring the good performance of the algorithm, as they are like more efficient. Algorithms are always efficient when they are dealing with the sparse matrix or sparse matrix. You can see here like 1 0 0 0 1 0 0 0 1. Like you can also call it the low dense matrix with lots of zeros values. So here only 3 values are 1 and remaining are 0. So they can be easily processed with the model by dealing with them. So that's what called handling the categorical data. I have also put another slide purposely to let you know that there are not only two types of attributes, there are four types, or you can say they are broadly divided into four types attributes, that is nominal, ordinal, interval, ratio, etc. So yeah, here you can see these are the various patterns for these all the things, and these are some examples. So this slide may help you to understand what I'm talking about previously. Yeah. So the next step is feature scaling. So now we have done with the missing value, we have done with the handling categorical data. Now the terms come to the picture is feature scaling. So now we have not even started our model to train or the training of models. So what the various phases we are going through, you can clearly visualize like how important it is to deal with the preparation of data. So there are two popular methodology on paper on the feature scaling. The first one is normalization, and the second one is standardization. So the feature scaling is a crucial step while processing the data, because the majority of machine learning algorithms perform much better when dealing with the features that are on the same scale. For example, if you are identifying the images of cat and dog, and you are giving a model input to the model is various cat and dog images, and you have collected from various data sources. So it doesn't mean that they are all on the same size. They some may be on the 720 by 840, some 1024 by 1024, or some maybe 128 by 120. So the thing is, what you will do, you will make all them in one size, like 128 by 128, so that model can work upon the specific size or something like that. So that's what the example. So here the normalization is what? Normalization refer to the rescaling the features to a range of 0, 1, which is a special case of min-max scaling. Like as you can see here, like x minus x min upon x max minus. This is a very simple formula, but yeah, what it do, it keep you between 0 and 1. So to normalize our data, we'll simply apply the min-max scaling method to each feature column. So that's how the normalization works. And if we call about the standardization, so it is also consists in the centering the feature column, like at mean 0 with standard deviation 1. So you already have the idea about this standard deviation and mean, and yeah, so that's how it works. So as a like the so that the column or the feature column could have the same parameters. So as standard normal distribution like zero mean or unit variance, this makes much more easier for learning algorithm to learn the weights of the parameters. And that's why how the standardization help to the models. In addition, it keeps the useful information about the outliers and make the algorithm less sensitive to them. So that's how the standardization helps, and that's what is about feature scaling. Now, let's move next. So the next is selecting meaningful features. Yeah, this is also another problem. Like there are many features. Which feature to choose, which feature not to choose. Suppose you have to find out the health condition of a man. Then there is no need to know his father name or his mother name or his wife name to know how his health is. So it is up to you. Like you should be able to identify the meaningful features and then your model will be work for the more real time examples. So suppose if you have not selected the meaningful features, then your model become overfit. For example, you have said this for any problem, the input is the name is this, and the other name should be this, and the date of birth should be this. Then only this. So then in this situation, the prediction of health will fail because with that name and the same father name, why will be 1 or 2? That is for understanding of an example. So that's what we call the problem of overfitting. So why it is called problem? That's why it is called the problem of overfitting. Here we have the redundancy in data. So when overfitting problem comes or redundancy in data comes, so what we do, we reduce the data dimensionality. As I have told you earlier, we can reduce the wife name, father names, and we can focus on the name, age, and previous diseases which he had previously or any other features. So how we do that? What the overfitting do? So overfitting is occurs because of redundancy of data. So which makes the model too complex for a given training data and unable to generalize well on unseen data, or you can see the real-time data. So one of the most common solutions to avoid the overfitting is, as I discussed, reducing data dimensionality. So this is the frequency done by reducing the number of features of our data set. And the most popular algorithm used on the reducing data dimensionality is the principal component analysis. Principal component analysis is an unsupervised machine learning algorithm and quite popular. And what it does is it identifies the pattern in our data based on the correlation between the features. And this correlation implies that there is redundancy of our data. So the data which is not essential in the model to learn its weight, and so it can be removed. it may be removed or it may be by directly eliminate some columns, or column means features, or combine the number of columns. Like as I have told you that x1, x2 are two features, we are multiplying and dividing to get the new features. So this is how it works. The principal component analysis, this is the most popular technique for the data dimension reduction. Yeah. So the next thing is splitting the data into subsets. So this is very important part. So in general, what we do, we split the data into the three parts: the training part, testing part, and validation part. So the question is, why not only training and testing? And what this validation come to the pictures? So we can have the training data, we can train, and then we can test the data. Why we need the validation? Validation data. So the answer is, to develop a model, it involves the tuning its configuration. In other words, choosing certain values for the parameters of the models. And that parameters are what they are called in which the tuning is done is called the hyperparameters. So this tuning is done with the feedback received from the validation set and is in the essence a form of learning. So here, the ultimate goal is that the model can generalize well on unseen data. So that's why the validation set is required. So as you can see here in the graph, because the hyperparameters are the parameters which you cannot change during the training. So once model is trained and you see there is some variation on the validation set when you are validating them on the basis of what you have trained. So that's what you do. Like you adjust the parameters like weight and bias, as mentioned here, and then do the predictions. So that's why it is important. The validation set is important. So as you can see here, also I have written the example like the number of clusters the model should identify, as I have already told this. So this is also a hyperparameter. Or you can say how many times the training need to be done is also a hyperparameter, like how many times it should be trained and what should be the learning rate. And these all there are the various parameters of which is known as the hyperparameter. So this is why it is important. So this comes after training, but as I have to answer this question, then I have put it in the previous starting slide. So the next step is the model selections or choosing a model. So there are different algorithms for different tasks. So the best part is choose the right one. But there are many models that researchers and data scientists have created over the years. So some are all very well suited for the image data, and some are for text or music data. And so it depending upon which kinds of data you are processing, you can choose the models. This is a simple step to choose. And every day models are getting populated. So yeah, it's an important phase to understand and then choose the model. Then train the model. So now finally, after doing all these data pre-processing, preparing, doing normalization, scaling, missing value, removal, blah, 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 now we can train the model. So what does the model training means? So one quicker step before training your model is which you have already done, that is splitting your data set. That is training, testing, and validation. So what the model training is actually now? The model training algorithms iteratively update a model parameter to minimize some loss function. So what it means? Let's unpack that one. So model parameters are configurations that the training algorithm can update to change how the model behaves. More specific terms used to describe model parameters, I have already shown you in the previous slide, weight and bias. So these are the model parameters. So yeah, so loss function which I was talking about, and Here you can see this is the example of snow cone sold. Like this was the temperature, and this was the how many numbers have been sold on these temperatures, and these are some of the previous or you can say the past value, and this is the line, or you can say a linear model which we have to adjust upon the this data. So yeah, so what we are trying to fit, like we are trying to fit in this example, like we are trying to fit a linear function to this data. So the parameter would be the orientation and location of the line, like nearly like uh, how it is slowly changing for the model parameters, like so that the model give more, like the model can give more accurate by reaching much closer to appropriate location. So a loss function is used to quantify the model's distance from the score. For example, if you're trying to predict number of snow cones cell, like based on the day weather, like you have to predict, then how your model accurately, how your model accurate will be, it depends upon the loss function. So what loss function do? So let's see a concrete example. Here you can see a wallet dot at the temperature 95 and the price is 12. And the previous, like which is on the line. And the previous experience shows that when the temperature was 95, then it was the 15. The snow cone sold was the 15. So here, what it shows that the line shows that there are 12 snow cones on a day, and when the temperature is 95. But our historical data shows that the number of snow cones sold is 15. So the difference between snow cone, like the predicted and actual value is 3. Like you can see here, 15 minus 12 is 3. So that is what our loss is. So what is the loss function? Like here we have to minimize, like so that our model can give accurate results. Like it is now saying 12, so it can give sometimes 15 or close to 15 or more close to 15. So that's what the loss function you can think of what it do. And this is how it in practice you are like use the loss functions. So there are various types of loss function like MSE, MAE, L1, L2. But yeah, that is a different story. But here, how the loss function basic phenomena is. Well, so as I said, you train the model and it will be good like for the solving task. So here you are training the model and updating the model's weight and bias and doing prediction, then testing again, then updating if required. So this is that's why it is called the iterative process. This will keep going until you are not satisfied with your results. So this is how the train model will work. Now let's talk about the evaluation on the trained models, like how you evaluate your model, which is trained. So now you have trained your model and it will be good at solving the task. So now we'll use some statistical metrics like accuracy and here are also some examples of different matrices that you can use uh, for the evaluating your model. For example, here the precision, F1 score, also recall is widely used, and R square, and many more. So these all are like you can explore on your own, and while developing the model and how this works. So with the basis of this, you can evaluate the model. And the very important point here is that this is not a one and done process. Like, yeah, you have trained the model and you have evaluated and yeah, you are done. No, you will be keep doing the same task again and again until your model gives the accurate results. Sometimes you have to go backward to change your data, your strategy, your exploration, everything. So that all you have to change while evaluating the model. So yeah, this is how it works, the evaluation. So now the thing is use the model for prediction. So use the model for prediction means what? I am saying one sentence again and again that it is an iterative process. So until you get the results you are looking for based on how your model evaluation goes, you may find that you need to go back to the previous step that we discussed. And you might need to change the configurations of parameters of the training model, or possibly even choosing different model. So you might have tweak the model and make adjustment to your data. You might even rethink how you are framing the problem. At some point, you will have a model which meets your need. So now you can use that model. So that model is called the uh, actual model, and this whole process is called the inference. Well, so yeah, now we'll show you some very basic examples on that, which we have seen just like what we are doing here. We are seeing the examples of supervised and unsupervised learning. So here we have labeled data like which image is dog and which image is cat. And we are training model, we are taking the new data and we are doing the prediction that, yeah, it's cat. And similarly, we'll see here are apple, bananas, and mangoes are there. And here there is no labeling on the data. And here the interpretation and algorithm work on the model training. And after processing, it categorizes them into the three different parts. Yeah, like based on their size, shape, or you can finding the pattern. So what we can visualize with this diagram? So like when we try to collect the data from different sources, like the first step I'm talking about with this context. So when we try to collect the data from the different sources, like depending upon the problem statement, like here we have the dog and cat. So we are developing a machine learning project, like where we pass one image to machine learning model, and this will identify whether the passed image is a dog or a cat. So in respect to that, we have to collect, like we are still in the data collection phase. So we have to collect lots of images of dogs and cat, and later use that set of images. And then again come to our picture data pre-processing. So as I have already told you, that all our sizes collected from the different sources are not same. So we have to resize them in the same scale. So suppose 128 by 128 pixels. So because same size to machine learning model can easily process that image in the data. So that's why it is important to resize the images. So one another important part I would like to highlight here, which is that when you are choosing the data, you make sure that your data is balanced. What I mean to say balanced here is, suppose you have 5,000 images of a dog and 1,000 images of a cat, and now you are training model on these data set, like 5,000 images dog and 1,000 images of cat. So what will happen? Our machine learning model will be more biased towards the dog, because of the like passing the dog images 5 times more than the cat images. So we have to make sure that if you are passing 2,000 images of dog, so you should also pass 2,000 images of cat. So that's like that's how you pass the data for the balance data for the training purpose of machine learning model. So this is a very important part in data processing step. Then another part is again splitting your data in test set, train set, and validation set. And uh, then the next step is machine learning model is selection of the like what you are trying to do. Like you are trying to classify the dog and cat, so you have to select the model. So you will choose a classification model. So for uh, when we selected the model, the next step is to train the machine learning model. So in this step, like whatever the data we have, we like already splitted it and we are training it. And then again, as I said, we have to test the data or evaluate the data, evaluate the machine learning model. So what we do, like we evaluate our trained machine learning model with the help of test setup data. So that is already spread. So in this fashion, how we train, test, and then later at the end we do for the hyperparameter tuning if the what we are expecting like Docker, we are not getting it and we are not getting good result. So then we do the hyperparameter tuning. And hyperparameter tuning is nothing but just a hit and try step, where you have to make changes in the value of the hyperparameter, and then you have to check that which value is giving the better result. So once you are done with the hyperparameter tuning and satisfied with the accuracy of your trained model, the last step is prediction. So in this step, new real-time data is passed to machine learning model, and with respect to that data, you will get the output, whether it is dog or cat. So hope I have cleared about the different steps involved in the machine learning, starting from the data collection, data processing, and model evaluation, training, and hyperparameter tuning to performance evaluation, and then predictions. So yeah, now we have seen here the supervised learning and unsupervised learning. Then it is important to know what are the advantages and disadvantages of unsupervised learning over supervised learning. So why should we go with supervised? This is always the question, when should we go with the supervised and when should we go with the unsupervised? So when you have labeled data, go with supervised. But what are the advantages of unsupervised? Yeah, the data labeling. The data labeling is a very challenging task because you have a huge set of data, and data labeling is mostly done manually. There are also some tools available, like Labelbox is working on very badly on I mean to say is very dedicatedly on the data labeling mechanisms. And data labeling itself is a very emerging area for the researcher to work upon, like how to automate the data labeling. It is a very crucial and challenging part, and still it is research in focus. So the advantage of unsupervised learning here is if you don't have any labeling, still you can find the pattern with the data, and then it can help you to understand what the data is like. And as I have already discussed about all these things, so yeah, these are some examples. And when it fails, the disadvantage, or you can say, their output may be less accurate, and if there are multiple or many parameters, then you can. There are some requests coming on my slides. Annotation request, what it is. So then it is time consuming when you have the data, and or you can say the continuous data, or many data. And in these cases, there are many features. On these cases, it could lead to the time consuming. So this is how the disadvantage of unsupervised learning can be think of. So the next slide would be the quote of the day for the ML. So a baby learns to crawl, walk, and then run. So currently we are in the crawling stage, and when it comes to the applying machine learning. So we are crawling now. So let's see how far it goes. And we will be able to see the walk and running stage in future. This is the quote of Dave Waters, which is the very famous artificial intelligence expert. Yeah. So that's it from my end. And yeah, thank you so much for patiently listening. And I hope I have not crossed my time. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, sir, for the informative session. To summarize briefly, Dr. Ajit Pathak sir has started with introduction of machine learning, then how data science is associated with machine learning, deep learning, and AI, and importance of data in machine learning. He has also given brief overview of supervised learning, unsupervised learning, and reinforcement learning examples and comparisons. Sir has focused on framework of machine learning model development, starting with problem identification, feature extraction to pre-processing, training, evaluating, predicting, and tuning the model. Sir has also elaborated steps involved in machine learning project development in depth with importance of every steps along with some examples. So hope all the audience will get the glimpse of how to develop machine learning project and which are the things we need to take in account for checking whether the project is on supervised learning or unsupervised learning, which are the steps to be followed, how to deal with missing values, and so on. So thank you very much, Dr. Ajit Pathak, sir. Now the forum
Thank
is
you.
open for question answer. You can ask question in chat window even, or else you can raise your hand. We can make you unmute and you can ask the questions to participate.
Then how has he said these things about his film?
Hello.
Yes, you can ask the question.